So here's your raw yam, and here's your cornflakes, or should I say processed maize. What?
Food everybody dey chop, reach your turn, use how dey teach photography.
Hello everyone, my name is Silva and I'm a photographer. I upload videos every week for beginners who want to start photography. So if you're into any of that, you might consider subscribing and also turn on post notifications so you can be notified whenever we upload a new YouTube video. So today we'll be talking about RAW versus JPEG. Yeah, I know this is like conflicts, is not JPEG, but it's kind of like the same thing because conflicts is processed and JPEGs are also processed. I just figured this might just be like the easiest way to explain RAW versus JPEGs to you. When you take a photograph, your camera can store the image in different file types. The file type can either be RAW or JPEG. A RAW file is basically what it is, RAW, while a JPEG file is a file type that's been processed by the camera. When you set your camera to save your photograph in a RAW file type, it means that the photograph is going to be saved as RAW file, meaning that you can do anything you want to do with it. So take for instance your raw yam. This yam can be processed into so many things. You can make pounded yam out of this, you can make boiled yam out of this, you can make fried yam out of this, you can make pounded yam, you can make whatever you want to make. You can peel the back and make amala. This can be processed into into whatever you want it to be. While on the other hand, we have cornflakes, which is the processed food already. You can't really do much with this, can you? You can't really process this to any other thing because it has already been processed from maize to this. So the least you could do is just to add milk and sugar and start eating. Yeah, in choosing your file type, you should think about how you want to process the image because that is mainly what really matters when you choose your file type. Because if you save your file type in RAW, it means that you can have a bit of space when you're editing, which means in post processing, and then you can really edit as much as you want. Really, basically, do anything you want to do with the RAW file. But you can't do that with the JPEG because it's already been processed. So the first difference between a RAW and JPEG file is that you can process a RAW file into anything you want while you're editing, and a JPEG file is usually like really harder and it just turns out really messy. Number two, a RAW file is usually larger than a JPEG file. RAW files are that big because they usually contain all the details in the photograph down to the megapixel. That explains why you can process a RAW file into whatever you want. There could be an advantage in shooting a JPEG, and the advantage is if you are not necessarily going to process the images later. Then you could just shoot in JPEG because JPEGs are smaller for Christ's sake, so you could just shoot in JPEGs and just take the files out of the camera and send it to whoever you want to send it to. Like during events, when I shoot events, I usually shoot in JPEGs because I know I'm not going to edit the photos later, so I just send them to my phone and distribute them to the owners of the photographs. Because if JPEGs are usually smaller files, then it doesn't take up so much space and it's also easier to transfer. I actually shoot RAW plus JPEG, which means that your camera is going to save that particular photograph in both RAW and JPEG. So just in case you might want to process any image you want, then you can just use a RAW file and edit out as much as you like. But if you do not want to use it, you can just use the JPEG however you like.
Okay, everyone. So I just figured that it would make more sense if you actually saw how raw images look like in post processing. This is a raw file of a photo I took for the face of Vans. In this raw file, we're going to increase the exposure. As you can see, this image is underexposed, but since a raw file contains so much detail, it just helps out when you're editing. So we're going to increase the exposure, and as you can see, it still has so much detail in it as a raw file. So we're going to go to the JPEG file and try to increase the exposure. Well, as you can see, it really doesn't look so good because this has already been processed. So the sky is blown out and it just doesn't really look good. So this happens because this image has already been processed because it's a JPEG file. So there's really not much you can do with the raw file. You can do anything you want to do with it. So I just really hope you understand the differences between raw and JPEG. That when you're choosing any file type you want to shoot in, you should probably consider how you want to post process your images.